Rex.
Joe Biden gives another speech in which he comes back and tells anybody who doesn't agree with them that they are the enemy of the world, that they are the evil that is all that is evil, and that these people should be uniting with him and his crop of good Democrats. So we'll talk about that and what that means. And I've listened to half the speech. I didn't get through the entire thing this morning, but yeah, we'll listen to that. We'll see what's happening with that and where we go with that. In other news, Elon Musk and the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez get into it with each other over the $8 mark for getting blue check verified over on Twitter, and I will comment on some of that and some of the things that are happening over there as well. It does look like it's going to be just as much of a trash heap as it was before. An Arizona judge has issued a restraining order against voter organization monitoring poll drop boxes, which I guess means that poll watching is now illegal. So we'll go over some of that and what happens there. And the White House deleted their tweet after getting fact-checked about what happened with the jab and the commie coup. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome back to midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I got up this morning, my usual playlist was dead, and they don't have a new one going up yet, so we went back to the classic Star Wars, but I mean, it's a short playlist, so we're going to hear every song 3 or 4 times. I think it's like only 35 or 40 minutes playlist, but regardless, I mean, it's a fun playlist. I like listening to this one, so we'll have a listen to the Star Wars playlist while we go talk about the Biden speech. It's ironic, and I did watch episode 3 the other night just because I had the Jedi March on my mind. You know, or not the... No, I guess it would be the Jedi March. When Anakin marched down the temple when... Well, I guess he was Darth Vader by that point. But when he was still human-looking Darth Vader, when they marched on the temple, that song was just... Somebody suggested it in a Discord that I'm in. Not mine, but another one that I'm in. And it was stuck in my head all weekend, so I watched that. And, you know, I look back and I see parallels to what George Lucas wrote in that was the early 2000s, and versus what I'm seeing now out of our current Hong Kong Stewart president. But you know, we'll talk about some of that. We'll go over the speech. The speech, just from the half that I got to listen to, it really sounded a lot like, "Come on, unify, you bastards! Just unify behind my will, man. Okay, come on, man." So we'll go over that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the election stuff, some of the Twitter stuff, and what is actually happening as we get in to the last few days before we decide which direction our country is going to go. So watch for that. We'll see what's happening with that. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, go check out Tweets by Brit, Overruled with KTZed, Mr. Behavior over on Twitch, and his video game design streams, the No Gimmicks podcast, go check Brady out over there, and PJ Patriot and the couple of shows that he puts out. Go check out all that great programming. It is going to be an awesome time, and we do always look forward to talking about these people who are bringing you news and culture from the common man for the common man. So definitely we'll go and check out all of those. And before we get started, one other thing that I want to talk about here, and I talked about yesterday, in things that I'm thankful for here, is that the Give, Send, Go is live. So, Athena Barbie Dolls has a PPROM pregnancy complication. I don't know what that means. Apologize for that. But she is having problems. I didn't even know that she was I didn't even know she was pregnant. I'm not gonna lie. But KTZed actually put out a fundraiser looking to get $5,000 to help with complications and medical bills that she's having with this here. So I will just I'll read a little bit of what's going on with this. Give, send, go, share brightly, and I'll get the link in the chat right away for everybody too. Both for now and after the fact. So if you are watching this after the fact on YouTube, pick up the live chat replay, because you're going to want to see that. And I'll get this up in the Discord too. But to read from the fundraiser. Michelle, Athena Barbie doll, was blessed with wonderful news 20 weeks ago when she found out that she was pregnant. After a devastating miscarriage in 2020, unfortunately earlier this week her water broke. Right now, her little girl has already proven to be a fighter. She is alive and moving, but they're admitting Michelle to the hospital to wait it out. It could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 15 weeks. Between 22 and 24 weeks, her baby will be considered by doctors to be viable. This fundraiser is to pay the bills so mom can concentrate on creating life. As an in-home caregiver for seniors, Michelle does not get paid unless she is at work. Preterm premature rupture of the membranes is a pregnancy complication. In this condition, the sac, amniotic membrane, surrounding the baby breaks after 37 weeks of pregnancy. Once the sac breaks, Michelle has an increased risk of infections. So, and it does look like, I don't know if there was people that had given to this before. Quest had mentioned that he had donated to this before I found out that it was shut down. So as of right now, it doesn't appear that there's anything raised for this, but if you guys want to, the link is in the description. Share it out far and wide, and let's make sure that Galaxy Barbie actually does get the care that she needs in order to go out and make sure that little baby comes into the world healthy and kicking. So with that, go and check that out. And we are going to get into the news, and we're going to start with finance. Looking at the Dow to start with, the Dow spent most of the day down. It did try to rally midday, as we can see off of this. It was about 2 p.m. local time where they started to come back and do a rally. Buy, and then it just crashed. As soon as Powell made his announcement of another 3/4 point rate hike, which we'll talk about in our second finance article here, boom. Done through the rest of the day, and the futures are not looking very good either right now. This coupled with, by the way, the fact that people are questioning whether or not they'll be able to get goods and sometimes services because of the diesel and the gas that the diesel brings, and the gas prices going up yet again. We'll have good news for that. For our Madisonian friends, as soon as we get into that segment here, but none of this is looking good for the markets, your retirement, your 401k, or anything else, with 5 days before the last day that you can vote. So we'll be talking about that and what happens with that and where this goes. 32,147.76 was the previous close on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. At your Bitcoin, the Bitcoin did drop also throughout the day today. It tried to rise as we went from the beginning of the day till now, but ending up, when I open up the link, at $20,089 US and 30 US cents on the day. That is down $61.90 US cents. On the 5-day, you can see another very significant drop in the Bitcoin as they looked at the 3/4 point rate hike and a rally attempt. It just, again, it didn't go anywhere. So that's what we see coming off of that. That is where our Bitcoin is at. And if you have Bitcoin, it's on life support at this point because, you know, that's the quickest and most liquid asset that's out there. It's the fastest thing that somebody can use if they need cash right now and are holding it in an asset that's not the US dollar. So that is what we see for that. And let's look at gas. Hey, what's that weird angular number at the beginning of the price at Quick Trip? What's that number right there? We haven't seen that for a few weeks. Oh, is that 4? A 4? Are we back up to $4 a gallon at the Quick Trip on the far west side? Yes, the Madison gas prices are not looking good, and they're probably not much better down by where I live. I'm not going to lie, I haven't looked, because I haven't needed to go get gas for a little while, but, well, I guess maybe I should. The BP up on the far north side is also at $4. The Quick Trip entering the Isthmus is at $4. The Amoco on the Isthmus is $3.90. Out to the far east side, the Quick Trip is at $4. The BP is at $4. The Amoco is at $4. The other Quick Trip, the one that's on Highway 30, is at $3.89. So that one's catching up very quickly. But all bad news is people are walking up to the polls. So I hope we get some relief afterwards. My biggest worry right now is that it's only going to get worse. And the news media is going to find a new scapegoat to blame. And they were just trying to hold some things on the life support until they could have a new scapegoat to blame. But that's what we have for that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures fall, market rally reeling as Fed's Powell signals higher peak rate. From Ed Carson. Dow futures fell sharp early Thursday, along with the S&P and the NASDAQ, while the Treasury yields rose sharply. Yes, please go buy our worthless bond yield. With currency that is being devalued 8 to 10% year over year. The market rally suffered major losses Wednesday following the Federal Reserve meeting. I'm a little surprised by that, actually, because, we talked about it yesterday. We knew this was coming. You would have think that the investors would have priced that in to what they were doing the day before, but nope. The major indices rebounded after the Fed hiked rates aggressively yet again, but signaled that it could start to slow the pace of rate increases. However, Jerome Powell then suggested that rates will peak at an even higher level than previously forecast. I think they're already there. Investors should be cautious as the stock market rally suffers damage, but it's not finished yet. Albemarle, CF Industries, Qualcomm, Sarepta Therapeutics, Fortinet, Robinhood Markets, World Wrestling Entertainment, and Elf Beauty reported after the close there were several losers with the Elf stock, the big earnings winner. Before Thursday's open, Cheniere Energy, Quanta Services, released results. Liquefied natural gas giant Cheniere reported a surprise loss, just as we report a surprise loss of our place in the article as we have to go back up to the top. Yeah, I don't care who the best broker is. Go away. I don't care about your stock market cheat sheet either, because right now is not the time that I want to be in that market. I would like to be in that market eventually, just not right now. Let's see. Quanta Services reported inline earnings with revenue just topping. LNG lost a fraction while Power, Quanta Services, was not yet active. Both Cheniere and Quanta Services are trading near buy points in shallow cup with handle bases. Tesla sold 704 China-made vehicles in October, according to industry data, up 32% versus a year earlier, but down nearly 14% versus September. Tesla cut China prices late last month, but the vast majority of October sales were likely exports to Europe and elsewhere. China EV and battery giant BYD sold a record 217,816 vehicles last month, including fully electric autos and plug-in hybrids, up 169% versus a year earlier. That includes 9,529 vehicles exported as BYD begins a massive international expansion. LNG is on the IBD leaderboard, while Albemarle and Sarepta Therapeutics and CF Industries are on the leaderboard watch list. CF Industries and Sarepta are on the IBD 50. As expected, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 75 points for a fourth straight meeting, to a range of 3.75 to 4. The Fed hinted at a slower pace for rate hikes, citing the lagging impact of cumulative tightening this year. Wow, I can really read today. In determining the pace of future increases in the target range, the committee will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy, the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity, and inflation and economic and financial developments, according to the Fed's post-meeting statement. Fed Chief Jerome Powell, speaking shortly after the Fed meeting announcement, agreed that policymakers could slow rate hikes as soon as December. He said the speed of rate hikes is less important now than where rates end up. But Powell suggested the Fed funds rate could end up higher as the Fed's September projection of 4.6. That suggests the Fed's fund rate of 4.75 to 5%. Markets now slightly favor another 75-point hike in December, just after favoring a half-point move on Tuesday. That would push the Fed funds rate to 4.5 to 4.75. Odds currently favor at least 50 points at the February meeting to 5 to 5.25. Friday's job report will be an important setting rate hike expectations. The November jobs report, as well as 2 CPI reports, will also arrive before the next rate hike on December 14th. On the futures, Dow futures fell 0.5%, the S&P sank 0.8%, and the Nasdaq lost 1%. The Bank of England raised rates to 75 points to 3% as expected before Tuesday's U.S. market open. The 10-year yield soared 13 points to 4.19%. Please buy our worthless bond. Look at all this return you'll get, 4.19%. That suggests yields will break a multi-day range and move towards 14-year highs set late last month. The dollar was rising after a strong upside reversal on Wednesday. Crude oil futures fell 1%, copper futures retreated 2%. The Hang Seng fell 3.1%. A top China health official said the country's no COVID policy will continue following unconfirmed social media chatter that sent Chinese stocks rallying Tuesday to Wednesday. The private sector Cakes and Services Purchasing Managers Index for China fell 0.9 in October to 48.4, falling further below the break-even 50 level. Other China manufacturing and services reports also pointed to contraction last month. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate to actual trading in the next regular stock market session. A lot of stuff that I'm looking at here because, they're starting to bring the Bank of England into this and European markets. We're talking about the Chinese markets and EVs. And one of the big copes that we consistently hear over and over again as we talk about what's happening with the Hang Seng and what's happening with the markets and where the markets are at is you shouldn't be worried about inflation because it's not Biden's fault, because it's a global phenomenon. Why are you even talking about what Biden did? Biden didn't do anything. And, there are a few ways to argue against that. Number one, first off, why do we have to accept it? That's the big one. Stop fire hosing money into the world economy and figure out how to draw some of this back. That's the big impact that we should be looking at here. But the other side, and when we look at something like this, is the rest of the world trades in US dollars. If you're in Slovakia and you want goods out of Japan, you're buying them in US dollars. That's the global benchmark of trade, and I know that the BRICS nations and Saudi Arabia and China are all trying to come back and get that moved out of US dollars and either moved into the yuan, or I think they talked about using Saudi Arabian currency. I know China is the big one, but they're trying to get it out of US dollars because we're in a situation right now. I can't blame them. I know that it would completely tank the US economy and probably lead to a Great Depression and mass starvation. But looking at this from a purely objective standpoint, I can't blame the rest of these nations for wanting to get out of the US dollar because, realistically, we fire hosed money into our economy and the world economy. Open up the spigot and just let it blast into there because, hey, we can just print the money and inflation be damned. And yes, we are dragging the rest of the world down with us. So that's what we see coming off of that. Let's grab one from CNBC about the rate hikes real quick, and then we'll talk about the Biden speech, which I think there are a couple queued up places that I want to listen to in the YouTube video that I have up here, so we'll probably listen to a little bit of that. Fed approves 3/4 point rate hike to take rates to the highest since '08 and hints at change in policy ahead. And this is from Jeff Cox. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday approved a fourth consecutive 3/4 point interest rate increase and signaled a potential change in how it will approach monetary policy to bring down inflation. In a well-telegraphed move that markets have been expecting for weeks, the central bank raised its short-term borrowing rate by 3/4 percentage point to a target range of 3.75% to 4% at the highest level since January of 2008. The move continued the most aggressive pace of monetary policy tightening since the early 1980s, the last time inflation ran this high. Along with anticipating the rate hike, markets also had been looking for language indicating it could be the last three-quarter point or 75 basis point move. The new statement hinted at policy change, saying that when determining futures, the Fed will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy, the lags with which the monetary policy affects the economic activity, and inflation and economic and financial developments. Economists are hoping that this much talked about step down in policy that could see a rate increase of 0.5 point at the December meeting and then a few smaller hikes in 2023. This week's statement also expanded on previous language, simply declaring that the ongoing increases in the target range will be appropriate. The new language read, the committee anticipates the ongoing increases in target range will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time. Stocks initially rose following the announcement, but turned negative during Chairman Jerome Powell's news conference, as the market tried to gauge whether the Fed thinks it can implement a less restrictive policy that would include a slower pace of rate hikes to achieve its inflation goals. Well, I mean, it hasn't worked yet, so good luck. We'll see what happens with this. We will watch the markets to see what happens with them. Let's talk Biden. From CNN, Biden sends a stark warning about political violence ahead of midterms. We can't take democracy for granted any longer, man. Come on. Just want to look at a couple things here. So they don't have any video with this one. We have this video with Obama. No, we don't have video with Obama. So I guess we will have to go back and look at the speech itself. From Kevin Liptak, MJ Lee, Betsy Klein, and Bill Mattingly. President Biden on Wednesday delivered a stark warning to Americans that the future of the nation's democracy could rest on next week's midterm elections. He said democracy, but he meant hegemony, of course. An urgent appeal coming 6 days before the final ballots are cast in a contest the president framed in nearly existential terms. Hey, we can't take democracy for granted any longer, man, the president said from Union Station in D.C., blocks from the U.S. Capitol, where a mob attempted to interrupt the certification of the 2020 election. Honk, honk. It was a sharp message to Americans considering sitting out next week's congressional elections that the very future of the country was at stake. No, the very future of their hegemony is at stake. Biden suggested the preponderance of candidates for office at the every level of government who have denied the results of the last presidential contest was red flashing warning signal for the country. As I stand here today, there are candidates running for every level of office in America. For governor, for Congress, for attorney general, man. The secretary of state who won't commit to accepting the results of the elections they're in. That's a path to chaos in America. It's unprecedented. It's unlawful. And it's un-American, man. Biden's speech placed the blame for dire national situation squarely at the feet of his predecessor. What a great uniter. Accusing the former president of cultivating a lie that has metastasized into a web of conspiracies that has already resulted in targeted violence. This intimidation, this violence against Democrats and Republicans and nonpartisan officials, just doing their jobs. The consequences of lies told for power and profit, lies of conspiracy and malice, lies repeated over and over to generate a cycle of anger, hate, vitriol, and even violence. In this moment, we have to confront the lies with the truth, man. The very truth of our nation depends on it. The American democracy is under attack. Now, Democrat hegemony is under attack because the defeated president refuses to accept the will of the people. The speech, a political event hosted by the DNC, not the White House, underscored the points that Biden had been making for weeks. Since a primetime speech in Philadelphia, yet it diverged from the central focus of Democrats' closing midterm message, which has been a brighter portrait of the economic recovery. Where? Do we need to bring the gas prices back up? Do we need to look at the diesel prices, the prices of goods, and the fact that there's a railroad strike coming? Are you out of your mind? Biden's message Wednesday was anything but optimistic, even as he remained hopeful that the Americans would reject the menacing forces he described. Aides said Biden was propelled to deliver the address after an attack last week on the husband of House Speaker Pelosi by an intruder who, according to his social media, wallowed in right-wing conspiracies, including about the election fraud, which was a lie, of course. Biden made sure to note that most Americans, even most Republicans, would not resort to violence, but he said those who would have outsized influence. I believe the voices excusing or calling for violence and intimidation are a distinct minority in America, but they're loud and they're determined, man. Biden and his team, mostly his team because they had to write it for him, had been contemplating giving a speech on the topic of democracy for some time, even though they're talking about their hegemony, not their democracy. But their decision-making in recent days has been shaped by what they viewed as a surge in anti-democratic rhetoric and threats of violence, but the attack on Paul Pelosi deeply alarmed Biden and his top advisors, even though they planned it. I mean, even though it was terrible and it was horrible and it shouldn't have happened. The shocking home intrusion and attack on Paul Pelosi landed the 82-year-old in the hospital for surgery, and he has since been recovering from a skull fracture, among other injuries. Advisors said ahead of the speech that Biden felt that it would be important for him to directly condemn these kinds of threats and acts of violence. Let's listen to some of this before we get too far into this. And I do have an incident as well that he very conveniently didn't talk about. It's a 20-minute speech, so we're not going to be listening to the whole thing, obviously. But look at that. Oh, look, and the live chat replay was turned off for this video, too.
Just a few days ago, a little before 2:30 a.m. in the morning, a man smashed the back windows and broke into the home of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the third highest ranking official in America. He carried in his backpack zip ties, duct tape, rope, and a hammer. As he told the police, he had come looking for Nancy Pelosi, to take her hostage, to interrogate her, to threaten to break her kneecaps. But she wasn't there. Her husband, my friend Paul Pelosi, was home alone. The assailant tried to take Paul hostage. He woke him up. He wanted to tie him up. The assailant ended up using a hammer to smash Paul's skull. Thankfully, by the grace of God, Paul survived. All this happened after the assault, and it's hard to even say. It's hard to even say. After the assailant entered the home asking, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" Those are the very same words used by the mob when they stormed the United States Capitol on January the 6th, when they broke windows, kicked in the doors, brutally attacked law enforcement, roamed the corridors, hunting for officials, and erected gallows to hang the former Vice President, Mike Pence. It was an enraged mob that had been whipped up into a frenzy by a president repeating over and over again the big lie that the election of 2020 had been stolen. It's a lie that fueled the dangerous rise in political violence and voter intimidation over the past 2 years. Even before January the 6th, we saw election officials and election workers in a number of states subject to menacing calls, physical threats, even threats to their very lives. In Georgia, for example, the Republican Secretary of State and his family were subjected to death threats because he refused to break the law and give in to the defeated president's demand, just find him 11,780 votes. Just find me 11,780 votes. Election workers like Shay Moss and her mother Ruby Freeman were harassed and threatened just because they had the courage to do their job and stand up for the truth, to stand up for our democracy. This institution, this intimidation, this violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials just doing their jobs are the consequence of lies told for power and profit, lies of conspiracy and malice, lies repeated over and over to generate a cycle of anger, hate, vitriol, and even violence. In this moment, we have to confront those lies with the truth. The very future of our nation depends on it. My fellow Americans, we're facing a defining moment, an inflection point. We must, with one overwhelming, unified voice, speak as a country and say there's no place for voter intimidation or political violence in America, whether it's directed at Democrats or Republicans. No place, period. No place ever. I speak today near Capitol Hill.
And, I mean, when we listen to a speech like this as he continues to go on, and he goes on until pretty much the end of the video. So, again, we're not going to go 21 minutes into listening to this. I think I subjected to you to this replica of Walter from Jeff Dunham long enough for you to understand that, yes, I mean, this is a toned-down version of the speech that was given in Philadelphia on September the 1st. Which was, by the way, only 2 months ago, and that feels like an eternity ago at this point. But it's still the same kind of rhetoric. Again, the people that don't agree with me are evil. They're domestic terrorists. Now, I want them to unite with me, and even if you love people like that, I want you to unite with me too. I'm going to take some time and try to put them all in prison, but I want you to unite with me. This is probably one of the most divisive administrations that I have seen in my lifetime, and I lived through the Bushes, both of them. So, that's what he had to say for that. Let's grab one from The Blaze. Biden sounds alarm ahead of midterms, claiming democracy is at risk. From Alex Nitzberg. We'll see in a bit if they've actually got a queued up point that they want to go with on their point, but President Biden is warning that U.S. democracy is on the line. No, Democrat hegemony, again, is on the line during the 2022 midterm election cycle. In our bones, we know democracy is at risk. Excuse me. He said every individual has the ability to preserve our democracy, and he knows what the nation will do so. Democrats are striving to cling to control in both chambers of Congress when Americans head to the polls on Election Day next week, and some Americans have already cast their votes prior to Election Day. Biden, who's not on the ballot, has been facing dismal job approval numbers in polling for quite some time. Biden pointed the finger towards former President Trump, asserting the U.S. democracy is under assault because the defeated former president declined to accept the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Well, I totally accept it because nothing bad happened, and freest and fairest and most secure election in history, 81 million votes, 10 scoops of ice cream. Now just unite behind him, you dirty election deniers. Honk honk. The current president went on to claim that the extreme MAGA Republicans, which he described as only a minority of the GOP, but also as the driving force of the party, are seeking to suppress the right of voters and subvert the electoral system itself. Biden claimed that they have emboldened violence and intimidation of voters and election officials. He opened his speech by discussing the recent assault perpetrated against Pelosi's husband, Paul. The suspect had reportedly asked, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" Biden said that the people who stormed the U.S. Capitol said the very same words on January 6, 2021. Yeah, they need that. They need January 6th because it's all they have. They've wrecked your economy. They've taken away many of your jobs. Now, some of the good news is that there are jobs out there for you to go to now. But you almost have to because your dollar is worth 8% less than what it was the year before and 6.2% less than the year before that. You're at a almost 14% loss on your dollar. During an event in Florida on Tuesday, Biden sought to boost Democratic gubernatorial candidate Charlie Crist and U.S. Senate candidate Rep. Demings, Sunshine State Governor Ron DeSantis, and incumbent Republican joked the move marked an in-kind contribution to his re-election bid and that his campaign would be willing to underwrite Biden sticking around until the end of the campaign cycle.
Governor, I know you're really nervous. You and Senator Rubio have got to be scared to death because Joe Biden is campaigning against you in Florida today, and I'm sure that really upset you.
I think it's an in-kind contribution to my campaign, and I just want to make the offer publicly. We will underwrite him to stay in Florida for the rest of the campaign. If Joe wants to stay, it'll be on our dime, and we'd love for the people of Florida to be reminded that the Democrats in this state are with Biden 100% of the time.
It's an in-kind campaign donation. That's funny. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Funny, this incident, by the way, of political violence wasn't mentioned during Biden's speech. From the New York Post, GOP New Hampshire Senate hopeful Don Bolduc dodges punch from would-be assailant before debate. Now, why wouldn't Joe Biden talk about this incident of violence? From Victor Nava, Republican New Hampshire Senate candidate Don Bolduc dodged a punch from a would-be assailant before stepping on stage to debate Maggie Hassan on Wednesday, according to reports. Bolduc, an retired Army Brigadier General, was apparently unharmed, and the individual who attempted to assault the Senate candidate was arrested, according to his campaign. You know what else was actually absent from Biden's speech? Remember that crazy guy who went up and tried to stab Lee Zeldin? Yeah, that was oddly absent from the Biden speech. But you know, we did get to hear about Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul, and January 6th. It's weird. It's like this was partisan in some way. As the general said on stage tonight, it's time to lower the temperature of the political discourse in this country. Prior to the debate, the individual in the crowd gathered outside attempted to punch the general and was quickly apprehended and arrested. A Bolduc campaign spokesperson told Boston 25 News. We're grateful to the quick response from law enforcement on the scene, the spokesperson added. The Post has reached out to the Bolduc campaign and New Hampshire's Goffstown Police Department for comment. Oh, that was happening in Goffstown? I stayed in Goffstown for like a week. Huh. It's like one of the few places in New Hampshire that I know. Kevin Donahoe, Hassan's campaign communications director, said on Wednesday that the assailant was a Libertarian Party activist and he condemned the incident. I doubt that highly. I really do, because that would violate the non-aggression principle. Disgusting behavior. We saw the same Libertarian Party activists get aggressive with our campaign volunteers at this debate and the last. Donahoe wrote on Twitter, "Yeah, I'm gonna need to see some proof of that." The debate between Bolduc and Hassan on Wednesday was the third and final debate before the November 8th poll election. Hassan leads Bolduc by 1 percentage point according to the Real Clear Politics average of polls. President Biden condemned political violence in a speech on Wednesday, including the recent hammer attack against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul. There's an alarming rise in the number of our people in this country condoning political violence or simply remaining silent because silence is complicity. Man, come on. Well, I guess it's only political violence if it goes against your side because, again, we've got Lee Zeldin. We've got this, which, again, I don't believe this as presented now, officially. But, yeah. I really doubt this was a libertarian activist. From the Daily Wire, Biden calling for Americans to unite demonizes Republicans as a threat to democracy. President Biden urged Americans to unite around shared values during a speech. And as Horatius has pointed out, shared values of, we hate anybody to the right of Bernie Sanders. During a speech he delivered Wednesday, where he repeatedly demonized tens of millions of Republicans as a threat to the country. Biden started his speech by connecting an attack by a deranged lunatic on House Speaker Pelosi's husband to the January 6th selfie fest at the U.S. Capitol. Biden then said that former President Trump's lies about the 2020 election have fueled dangerous rise in political violence and voter intimidation over the past 2 years. Yes, I'm actually sure that the attack on Lee Zeldin was inspired by Trump's speech on January 6, 2021. The same with the libertarian, honk honk, who attacked Bolduc. I am sure that those people were inspired, deeply inspired. This violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials just doing their job, man. And when I say Republicans, I don't mean Lee Zeldin, because I'm going to ignore that. I mean Brad Raffensperger. He's a swell guy, because he wanted to do our bidding in the 2020 election where nothing bad happened, and freest and fairest election in history, man. Just, come on, man. Lies of conspiracy and malice. Lies repeated over and over that generate the cycle of anger, hate, vitriol, and even violence, man. I would love to see some of these Reddit posts, Horatius. I'm not saying they don't exist. But I think it would make some effect if they were put up on the screen. Biden said Trump's claims were an article of faith in the MAGA Republican Party, and that extreme MAGA Republicans aim to question not only the legitimacy of past elections, but elections being held now and into the future. Well, I mean, you're already coming out here and saying that Russia's planning on stealing this election and installing their people, so your people are already prepared not to accept the results of this election. The extreme MAGA element of the Republican Party, which is a minority. No. I'm not saying all Republicans. It's just the minority. Okay, no. I'm not making the same speech I made in Philadelphia earlier this year. But its driving force is trying to succeed where they failed in 2020, to suppress the rights of voters. See, it's okay when we say an election gets stolen, but you dare not say that on anything else. The freest and fairest election in history, Hong Kong. And subvert the electoral system itself, Biden claimed without evidence. That means denying your right to vote and deciding whether your vote even counts, he also said without evidence. Instead of waiting till the election is over, they're starting well before it. They're starting now. They've emboldened violence and intimidation of voters and election officials. It's estimated there are more than 300 election deniers on the ballot all across America this year. I'm going to back you up just a little bit, because this is why I stopped saying, or why I started rather correcting them when they started talking about our democracy when they really mean their hegemony. If there are more than 300, quote, election deniers on the ballot all across the country who were picked against their, freely and fairly by the way, against their good, conservative counterparts, the good Liz Cheneys and the Bushites of the party, these wonderful people who just roll over and give us whatever we want when we call them racist. Do you not think that means that there is a vast, possibly even a majority of people across this country who believe that, for purposes of YouTube, this election was completely free and fair and nothing bad happened, and honkety honk, and 81 million votes and 10 scoops of ice cream? Don't ban me, Susan. If there are 300 people that got picked to be on the ballot, don't you think that speaks to a broader idea that nothing bad happened?
It's resistance.
After repeatedly demonizing Republicans, Biden said, "We need to start looking out for each other again. Seeing ourselves as we the people, not see each other as entrenched enemies." And that's the important part. That's the important part of this entire speech. And I troll and roast the people around Twitter who don't understand what it is that they're doing about this, because they have no problem dehumanizing anybody who does not agree with them. They have zero issue doing that. And this is the kind of speak, by the way, that leads to boxcars and gas chambers when they start looking at people who are less than human. Because, of course, Biden says we need to start looking out for each other and seeing each other as we the people, except for these people who denied the election. Because those aren't people. They're cockroaches. And mark my words, Biden may not himself be willing to do it, because he has no idea what's going on. But the people who most ardently follow him will put you in the chamber with Zyklon B without a second thought. From Fox, McCarthy slams Biden for dividing the nation ahead of a speech assailing MAGA Republicans. Yeah, McCarthy actually plays and pretends to be a MAGA Republican on TV, but he's like Ron Johnson. He just went where the most power was in the party. Before Trump arrived on the scene, he was out there calling to bomb and spread Christianity through the force of a drone in the Middle East, just like the rest of them. From Brooke Singman, Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, reacting earlier in the day to the news of President Biden's political speech on Wednesday, told Fox News Digital that Biden is dividing the nation instead of uniting it, and warned that the commander-in-chief could get a very big wake-up call on Election Day. Biden was set to deliver an attack on Republicans at a DNC event outside Union Station in D.C., just blocks from the Capitol, less than a week before voters cast their ballots and determine the balance of power in Congress. Biden was set to slam Republicans and election deniers. But in an exclusive interview with Fox News Digital Wednesday afternoon, McCarthy said the people aren't buying what he described as Biden's deflection. He's dividing the nation instead of uniting it at a time when we need to unite, McCarthy told Fox News Digital, and he's doing that because he can't talk about the policies where people are hurting, the pain of the cost of living and inflation, and what they have caused. McCarthy added he's trying to deflect, and the American people aren't buying it because every single day they go to the store and they can't afford to buy things. They worry about the future of our children. But, hey, don't worry about the inflation you're seeing in the stores, because still vote for Democrats, because Republicans have no plan to combat that. Yes, actual campaign pitch from Democrats. Biden previewed his remarks on Wednesday by saying there's a whole lot at stake on Election Day, and there are 350 election deniers on the Republican ballot. Everything from state house races to secretaries of state, to governors, to senators. Biden's DNC speech on Wednesday is expected to expand those attacks and frame the midterms as critical for democracy as Democrats try to hang on to power in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Well, good luck. But again, I'm less than interested in what McCarthy has to say. Josh Podhoretz, over on the New York Post opinion side, Biden's riot act falls flat. This is from John Podhoretz. The opinions expressed in this op-ed are the opinions of John Podhoretz and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the New York Post, Contemporary, Turns of Pages Productions, or your host, J. Edgar. Joe Biden wanted to give a stirring speech to rouse Americans to angry purpose about threats to democracy, represented by election deniers running for office across the country. He was, according to CNN's reporting, spurred to action by the horrible attack last week on the husband of the Speaker of the House, which Biden believes is a direct result of Trump's effect on the U.S. over the past 7 years. So that's what he wanted. But the great philosopher Mick Jagger once said, "You can't always get what you want." The address he delivered on Wednesday wasn't a forceful speech, it was a forceless speech. Biden didn't appeal passionately to the better angels of our nature because there was no energy behind his words. He seemed exhausted, spent, so much so that even in the course of making an argument I find repellent, he didn't even get me mad. Yeah, when I was listening to it the first time, I kind of just laughed through the whole thing. Instead of being roused to rage by his cagey effort to turn the horrifying violent act of a paranoid schizophrenic into an implicit indictment of the very idea of voting Republican, I felt almost paternal towards Biden, who was 18 years older than I am. It was like he was one of my kids and he was showing signs of having stayed up too late, and it was past time for him to go Betty bye. That's funny, I like that. And there was much in the speech I found inarguable. Was the January 6th attack horrendous? Yes. Are people who deny the results of the 2020 election wrong? Very wrong. Honk honk. Has Trump put the loyalty to himself above loyalty to the Constitution, as Biden put it? Kind of. I'm going to argue with Podhoretz here, and there is an element to it, but I don't think it's as pronounced as people like Podhoretz and Biden want it to be and want to make people believe that it is. There is a religious aspect to the MAGA movement. I will not deny that. That's part of the reason I got off that train to begin with. While I would like to see the former president come back and be the president again and get us another set of tax cuts and an economic powerhouse going again, I can't argue against the fact that it's damaged the religiosity of our country and people who do see him as the golden calf. But it's the election denial itself is a paramount threat to the very future of this country, as the speech would have you believe. Please. If it were, then every person who stood by smiling and nodding as Stacey Abrams claimed the governorship of Georgia had been stolen from her, hundreds of elected Democrat officials across the country among them, would be every bit as guilty of a crime against our country's foundation as the people who thought and think the same of Trump's loss in 2020. They aren't some guilty of any substantive offense except for being sore losers on someone else's behalf. That stinks, and we're less civil politely because of it. But while election denial did play a role in inspiring the January 6th attack, honk honk, I don't believe that for a second, the shocking increase in political violence in the U.S. long preceded it. Trump encouraged people at rallies in 2016 to beat up protesters. That was evil, but it had nothing to do with the election denial. Evil was also at work when Bernie bro James Hodgkinson, he wasn't a Democrat though, we don't talk about him, shot up the congressional baseball game in 2017, but not election denial. Treating Pelosi as the personification of a bad status policy has been a feature of American politics since 2010. Doing so is not evil. It's hardball, negative politics, and it's not all that special either. Democrats hated Gingrich when he was the speaker, but again, that doesn't count because he's to the right of Bernie Sanders, so that doesn't count. Every bit as much of their time, and none of it was election denial. I'm going to take that a step further, and I'm actually going to stop this article at this point too, but I'm going to take that a step further. Boehner, Paul Ryan. Now, with Paul Ryan, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that for just a sec. But I mean, it's worth noting that they said the same stuff about Paul Ryan, as they said about Newt Gingrich, as they said about Trump, as they said about Bush, as they said about Cheney before they adopted her into their party, as they said about Kinzinger when he was still mostly in the Republican Party, when he was in the monoparty. As they said about Romney, as they said about McCain, and I agree with them on those ones. They say the exact same stuff about that. Paul Ryan, and this one I can do from experience because he was my representative for probably almost my entire adult life, up until recently. Because I never changed my address out of Kenosha when I lived on the East Coast because I was a resident student and I didn't have to. With the exception of 2014, 15, and 16, when I lived in District 2, when I was just outside of District 1 at the time, too. So, like, when I went south to visit my girlfriend, within 10 miles, I was in District 1 again. And then now I live in District 1 again now. So with the exception of those 3 years, from pretty much the time I turned 18, Paul Ryan was my representative. And then when he got voted out a couple years ago, well, when he retired a couple years ago, let me rephrase that. Now we've got Brian Stile down here, who is pretty much a worthless do-nothing himself as well. But Paul Ryan is not the embodiment of evil that they made him out to be. And people like, and I can't even think of this dude's last name anymore, people like Potteretz are going to sit here and try to say that it was just Gingrich and they didn't say anything about Boehner or anybody like that. No, hell yes they did. Yes they did. Paul Ryan was the most evil human being because he was the Speaker of the House that would stand up against the saint, the Messiah, Barack Obama. So none of this that they're doing here is new. Absolutely nothing new. Was Paul Ryan a bad representative? Yes. Was he the embodiment of evil? Not a chance. But that's what you have for that. I also, speaking of the political violence and what Horatius said, actually reminded me of something. I don't know if he's talking about the same incident, but I remember when Trump came to Janesville for the first time in 2015, or was it 16 by that point? I think it was 15. No, it was 16 because it was in the spring of 16. In 2016, when Trump came to Janesville the first time, and he went to the hotel over on just off of the interstate on 14 over there, they framed it all as a 15-year-old getting pepper sprayed, and how horrible it was that Trump supporters would pepper spray a 15-year-old. And she walked up and decked a 72-year-old man in the face. She walked up out of the blue and punched a 72-year-old guy in the face and got pepper sprayed for her efforts, and she was 15. And the focus was always on the fact that they pepper sprayed her. Speaking of the great Democrat messiah, as Biden demonized Republicans, Obama warns people are going to get hurt amid demonizing in politics. From Ryan Saavedra. Former President Barack Obama warned on the campaign trail Tuesday, because nobody wants Joe Biden to go and campaign for them, that demonizing political opponents was going to get people hurt. Remarks that he made just the day before Biden demonized Republicans in an address to the nation. And again, if you look at their rhetoric, it's that they don't believe that certain of their political opponents are people. The remarks from Obama came as Democrats have needed him on the campaign trail ahead of next week's midterms due to Biden's low approval ratings and the general dissatisfaction that many in the country have about how things are going, particularly the economy. Yeah, I've got a friend in London that we're actually trying to bust out too. But again, as Arvolt pointed out, it's probably not the best time. And I know that my friend in London, it would probably be pretty easy to get him over here because his wife's a doctor, gang. This increasing habit of demonizing political opponents creates a dangerous climate, Obama said at Tuesday in a rally in Nevada. Well, if he was in a rally, he's probably had the teleprompter. He elected officials who do not explicitly reject or participate in over-the-top rhetoric, if that's what they're doing instead. Well, if they just ignore or make light of that kind of violence, or if they encourage their supporters to stand outside voting places, armed with guns, and dressed in tactical gear, and that's the environment we create, more people are going to get hurt. So again, this only goes one way with Barack Obama. Doesn't go the other way when somebody goes to try to punch Dean Boldock outside of a debate, or punch an elderly man as a minor in a parking lot in a hotel in Janesville, Wisconsin in 2016. Biden later gave an address to the nation where he urged Americans to unite around shared values despite repeatedly demonizing tens of millions of Republicans as a threat to democracy. Hey, no, man, I'm not talking about tens of millions of them. It's just a little minority, man. I'm just stop making me do stuff. All right, so that's the speech. If you guys want to see it, it is here in its fullness. It doesn't start until about the 6-minute mark. Put that in here for you. If you guys want to go back and watch that, bookmark it. Actually, let me put that in the Discord right away too. Well, listen for yourself. The low energy speech that this was. Let's talk Twitter. So a lot of people now have been trying to trigger the censorship algorithms to try to prove that Elon Musk isn't free speech. I know I've seen pictures of Elon bald, pictures of Elon with Ghislaine Maxwell, outright insults of Elon with the header after, or the tag after them. Well, let's see how long it takes for Elon to come and take this down. Yes, you have defeated Elon Musk, who just dropped $44 billion on the table to go buy this platform. You, a person who's probably unemployed, just defeated him. Aren't you proud? Trump is dead is trending on Twitter after a verified user apparently decided to test moderation of the platform under Elon Musk's reign. From Callie Hayes. A comedian and actor is putting Elon Musk's control of Twitter and its moderation practices to the test. Tim Heidecker, known for his stand-up and TV work, with fellow comedian Eric Warheim on Tuesday, started the hashtag #TrumpIsDead on Twitter, owned by Musk since Thursday. In a short series of tweets regarding the former president, Heidecker wrote, "Trump is dead, died badly," and tagged Musk in saying the billionaire suppressed this news, or has he? Well, apparently, neither of these people are really funny because I've never heard of either one of them. Although I will say I've been out of the stand-up loop for a while. I think the last stand-up special that I watched was that Taylor Tomlinson girl that I liked. Many are sad by the news, Heidecker went on. I heard that he died in a sad and sick way. Not as a dog, but this reporting could change soon. This comedian is verified on Twitter with a blue checkmark by his name. Within an hour, Heidecker's tweet had amassed close to 20,000 likes, thousands of retweets, and hashtag #TrumpIsDead began trending on Twitter on Tuesday. Musk had yet to respond to or comment on the post. He has remained a very active user since his takeover, tweeting and responding to other tweets numerous times each day. Well, I didn't think this was very funny. The use of slurs and hate speech grew exponentially in the days following Musk's takeover. The platform has also limited the number of employees allowed to remove such content since he took over, as Bloomberg reported. Although Twitter's head of safety and integrity, Yoel Roth, said Twitter's rules were still being enforced at a scale amid the Musk transition. Well, one of the things that goes with that is the fact that there were Reddit threads, and not just one, but numerous Reddit threads that were dedicated to people coming out and saying that if Elon takes over, then they are going to go out and flood Twitter with the N-word to try to make it scary to advertisers and App Store developers. If they can't have it, they want it gone. From the Daily Wire. Musk agrees to restore censorship tools after meeting with leftists. Elon caved in less than a week. Called it. From Ryan Saavedra. New Twitter CEO Elon Musk reportedly will restore the content moderation tools that he briefly suspended after taking over following a meeting that he had this week with left-wing groups. Bloomberg News, which is Ron Helton's favorite outlet by his favorite politician, reported that Musk promised the groups that he would restore content moderation tools that had been blocked for some staff by the end of the week. Musk's decision comes after the leaders complained about Musk's plans to relax speech protections on the platform and restore the accounts of users who had been removed. Free Press's Jessica Gonzalez said that Musk would continue consulting with the people of color, religious minorities, and people most impacted by hate and disinformation on the platform.
So lonesome in my life.
Musk has not seemed open to listening to constructive criticism on the platform about some of his plans, regardless of whether those making the suggestions are on the political right or the political left, or somewhere in between. Musk has claimed that this is a good thing.
Realized
Is that Musk?
I could even miss anyone.
No, that's Cernovich. I've seen folks curious why Twitter is relying on the research of Renee DiResta, a high-level exec in a firm that bought Russian bot accounts to follow a Republican candidate in an effort to mislead voters, political commentator Mike Cernovich tweeted. Maybe ask Renee, why did they do this? Why is someone connected to a false flag operations, their words, at new knowledge during the 2018 midterms anywhere near election integrity people at Twitter? Cernovich asked. All of this was documented. It's not a matter of opinion. They bought Russian bots to follow a Republican candidate. Cernovich's remarks are in reference to an explosive report in the New York Times back in 2018 that revealed a leftist group used the same tactics as Russia to meddle in the Alabama Senate race against Republican nominee Roy Moore, who lost. Judge Roy Moore, by the way. Tim Pool. responded to the latest developments by stating, Elon caved in less than a week. I'll spend $8 after Elon frees the political prisoners and releases documents on the DHS collusion with Twitter to control and suppress information. Considering he's already working with the new knowledge, I really doubt he will do anything. And I know, and I'm probably going to hate listen to this video, but I know when Tim comes out with this video that he talks about, he's going to say it just like that. Elon Musk has caved in less than a week. That's how it's going to start. Maybe it already did and I haven't seen the video yet. Maybe he did it already. No idea. But on the other side of it, from Fox Business, Musk mocks AOC, others angry over price for Twitter blue checkmark. I think the blue checkmark thing is genius. And I'll tell you why. Let's read about this for just a second, and then I'll tell you why I think this is actually genius the way that it was. The way that it was done. From Bradford Betts. Elon Musk on Wednesday shot back at Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch, after she ridiculed his plan to charge $8 a month for Twitter users to receive a verified blue checkmark. Okay, puppy, LMAO, the billionaire, earnestly trying to sell people on the idea that free speech is actually $8 a month subscription plan. Okay, puppy? Chavez tweeted after Musk announced the overhaul. Musk responded to her tweet telling her, "Your feedback is appreciated. Now pay $8. Later Wednesday, he drew attention to a nearly $60 sweatshirt from Chavez's website. Musk, who took over Twitter last week after closing a $44 billion deal, has been assailed by users on all sides over his plan to charge $8 a month to be verified. Despite the criticism, he says the plan will remain. To all the complainers, please continue complaining, but it will cost $8. Musk has noted that basic Twitter will remain free to use, but accounts that pay to receive the blue check would get other benefits. In a follow-up tweet, he poked fun at critics who thought $8 a month was too steep a hill to climb. The tweet appeared to target people who were willing to splurge on an overpriced frappuccino but couldn't handle paying $8 a month to be verified. Alright, here is my thought for this. Now, when you go and get verified, and back when we were still running as Freedom Scoop, Jake actually looked into getting all of us verified over on Twitter. Getting all of us blue check marks. And a lot of it had to do with, there has to be a Wikipedia article about you, which he was going to go back and write them up for all of us. We have to submit our early life. Various other things that goes along with that. But there was a process. And typically the people who were responsible for doing the blue check marking, etc., were publicists for whoever the celebrity or political figure was. A comms director, a publicist, or somebody like that. Somebody whose job would be made infinitely harder if that person was to be imitated on a social media platform somewhere. But some of that did cheapen the blue check mark because, you know, any no-name at Raw Story or something like that can now get a blue check mark. Because, or, you know, I can use us as an example too, because, I mean, we're all still trying to grow at this point, but any no-name at some small website like Freedom Scoop could get verified at that point on that, as long as the publicist was able to do so. And it cheapened it a little bit, but it was, I mean, a lot of these people, like Chavez, like David Hogg, like Jersey, My Wife's Son, Reliant, people like that. Although I noticed that JoJo from Joyce doesn't have one of those little blue check marks. But these people, they use that as a status symbol, as a badge. As far as publicists go, especially for high-end campaigns or publications, New York Times employees, celebrities, like Rihanna or someone like that, to get the blue check mark, to have it up there, they would pay $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a year to keep that, to keep their job, because they've got the money from royalties and everything the celebrity's bringing in, or whatever the network's bringing down, or something else like that. They've got the money to do that. The campaigns would do. I bet you the campaigns would pay $3,000 a year to have the blue check mark. But the fact that it's $8, I think, is what's really triggering the people with that. The fact that it's $8 means that it's available to me, to you. And it takes that status symbol away from these people, and it makes them just like the rest of us. Whose truck is that sitting outside, and why is it parked over there? Might have to go investigate something here really quick. Maybe I'm about to get shot. Give me just a second. No, it's not feds, because they usually don't use something that old. It's a random mid-90s Chevrolet pickup truck just sitting outside. Not in a parking spot either. That's what caught my attention. It's not in a parking spot. Maybe I'm about to get shot. Maybe it's an assassin. Somebody who doesn't like what I'm saying about this. In a follow-up tweet, he poked fun at critics who thought the $8 a month was... we read about that already. Yeah, there we go. 30 minutes of that for 30 days for $8. So, and again, that's the point that I see about that is because it's $8, and even for $20 a month too, that puts it attainable to the rest of us. That makes it something that the rest of us can reach, and we can get on the same level as these celebrities who had to go through grueling processes to become verified. Coming to Yahoo News from Reuters, advertisers begin to grill Elon Musk over Twitter free-for-all. From Sheila Dang. Oh, dang. Elon Musk promised advertisers would keep Twitter from turning into a free-for-all hellscape this week. Advertisers are beginning to demand details on how he plans to uphold that commitment. A media buyer at one major ad agency, who declined to be named for fear of reprisal, said the agency would meet with Musk this week to ask how the Tesla chief executive plans to clamp down on misinformation on the social media platform. The buyer also wanted to know how Musk's pledge to squared with his own actions, including one tweet over the weekend that spread a conspiracy theory about the attack on U.S. House Speaker House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband Paul. Maybe he really is the speaker. Other topics include Musk's plan to raise the cost of Twitter subscription service and serve half as many ads, and who will serve as advertisers' point of contact after a procession of senior executives, including Twitter's ad chief, left the company since he took over. The agency's top clients are expected to join the meeting, the media buyer said. Neither Twitter, nor Musk, I think it should be, immediately responded to a request for comment. After tweeting in 2019 about his dislike of advertising, Musk is now under pressure to avoid alienating the advertisers, who contribute more than 90% of its revenue. He's spending his first week as CEO in New York, with venture capitalist friends joining him in meetings to reassure companies that contribute more than $5 billion annually to Twitter. Which is fun, because I don't ever have to see the ads, because I have an ad blocker. From the Daily Wire, frequent MSDNC guest takes action to strip Elon Musk of his U.S. citizenship, gets mocked instantly. From Ryan Saavedra. Far-left radio host Dean Obiadella, who appears regularly on MSDNC, announced this week that he was trying to take action to strip new Twitter CEO Elon Musk of his U.S. citizenship. As a lawyer, I'm going to do research to see if Elon had anyway lied on his application for U.S. citizenship, Obiadella claimed. I'll be making a FOIA request for his immigration application. If he lied anywhere on the application, we will move to strip him of U.S. citizenship. Stay tuned. I have formally made a request via FOIA today for Elon's immigration application documents. He continued, I will let you know what I hear back. The application may be 100% fine with no misinformation or lies. Then again, we'll see. Because it's Elon, number one, why would he care? Because he can put all of his companies into a shell company and go live literally anywhere else in the world. And number two, and this is the important one, do you think this hasn't already been scrutinized? Morons. Obiadella claimed that Musk was trying to manipulate both the U.S. political sides into violence. Remember, Elon Musk does not love the USA. He claimed without evidence he's using us to attack each other. Is Elon Putin funded? China funded? Unclear, but he's anti-American. Obiadella was mocked online over the claims. Journalist Yashar Ali tweeted, some of you have truly lost the plot. Also, you can't gain access to someone else's immigration records without their written consent. As a lawyer, even as Obiadella acknowledged that Musk would have to consent to such records being released, but then floated a conspiracy that Musk could be hiding something if he does not agree. If he consents, I will share the file, Obiadella tweeted. If he refuses to consent, then we must ask, what is Elon hiding? Tatiana Pasalik mocked Obiadella, writing, people breathless about fascism on the reg, openly promoting stripping Elon Musk of U.S. citizenship because he disagrees with them. Amazing! I did everything by the books when I moved here, and now watch the U.S. immigration turn into a joke. Open borders, toying with the idea of illegals voting, free money, abortions, IDs, all okay on your tax dollars. But Elon Musk disagreeing with the lib, she continued. He must be sent back. Much tolerant. Very wow. Rookie, investigative journalist Chuck Ross tweeted, you're not getting that crap through FOIA. National Review editor Rich Lowry tweeted, they'll want his birth certificate next. If this doesn't get Musk deported, nothing will, attorney Scott Greenfield mocked. Ari Cohn says, it seems fitting that a dude who was suspended from practice for 12 years would write something this stupid and incompetent. I'm going to skip the Daily Mail one because we talked about the content moderation already. Bill Shatner got into it, though. William Shatner has hilarious response to Musk charging for blue check marks. From Katie Jerkovich. Star Trek legend William Shatner had a hilarious response Wednesday to Twitter CEO Elon Musk's plan to charge $8 a month to those verified Twitter users with blue check marks. The 91-year-old actor told one follower he had zero plans to pay for false status on social media platform when he was already has prestige in real life. I think the $8 is to submit a complaint, Shatner tweeted to his 2.5 million followers. To answer your question, if I would pay for a blue check, no. I don't need to pay for false status when I have real, he tweeted. Elon possibly thinks people would. Knowing the delicate egos of people online, he's probably right. Hashtag no blue is better. In another post, a person told Shatner it's silly because only legitimate celebs should get the blue tick who have earned that status, not egomaniacal nobodies who think they ought to have it just because they can buy it. Shatner tweets back, "You missed way back when they first came out. When an editor of an online publication justified to me giving one of his employees a blue check because he did his job so well. That tweet was removed right away because it went against why checks were given out in the first place." Again, I think that the big part of this is it just because it puts the fine, upstanding journalists and everybody else on the same par as those of us who are plebes. All right, what else do we have here? Let's this could even be a thing that I hate, but I'm not going to run it as something that I hate. Let's talk about Anne Hathaway here for a moment, because she got into it. Anne Hathaway says abortion can be another word for mercy. I used to like her a lot. Still think she's good looking.
You know, The Devil Wears Prada did turn 16 this summer.
Yes.
The time flies, boy. So you wrote this on Instagram, quote, "I am struck by the fact that the young female characters in this movie built their lives and careers in a country that honored their right to have choice over their own reproductive health. See you in the fight." So why did you write that? Why was it important to you to write something like that?
Because we're in the fight.
Yeah.
We're in the fight every day. We're in the fight every minute. And you mentioned The Devil Wears Prada turning sweet 16.
Yeah.
Some 16-year-old's life has been irrevocably changed because of the current overturning of Roe v. Wade. And in this character, I played a young woman who was starting out her career. And when you are a young woman starting out your career, your reproductive destiny matters a great deal.
Of course. Yeah.
And I just, it had just happened, and I think about it all the time. I think we all think about it all the time, and what its implications are, and what it means to live in a country that puts us in this position.
Again.
Again.
Yeah.
Again. And so if I were to play that role nowadays, I couldn't take that for granted. I couldn't take that freedom for granted, the freedom of choice. And by the way, this is not a moral conversation about abortion.
Right.
This is a practical conversation about women's rights. And by the way, human rights, because women's rights are human rights. And the freedom that we all need to be able to choose and build our lives and have access to excellent health care. May I just say one other thing, and just without going into too many details, my own personal experience with abortion, and I don't think we talk about this enough, abortion can be another word for mercy. We don't know. We don't know. It's not a world in which, we know that no two pregnancies are alike, and it follows that no two lives are alike. That follows that no two conceptions are alike.
Yep.
So how can we have a law? How can we have a point of view on this that says we must treat everything the same? And where I come at it from is when you allow for choice, you allow for flexibility, which is what we need in order to be human. So that, anyway, I just wanted to include that,
Especially for
that
health.
part. Especially for that. It's not set in stone. Just because you get pregnant doesn't mean you get to keep that baby.
Yeah, it's a health decision.
And it can be.
It's
it really
personal
can
decision.
be.
Yeah.
Right.
That is the will of the people.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with that, and unfortunately I did miss a little bit of that because the maintenance person that's who that pickup truck outside, by the way. The maintenance person is going to be changing all the sockets around here because, like, literally the outlets are falling out. The plugs are falling out of everything here. That's who that is. So probably gonna have to start wrapping this up here in just a couple minutes. But yeah, abortion can be another word for mercy. And yeah, your life can be irrevocably changed. Well, there are ways to do it without getting pregnant. I cannot sit here and preach abstinence. I'd be a hypocrite if I did that. But I conducted my life before I did make myself abstinent. I conducted my life in a way that we never had to worry about that. I was careful about it. There are things you can do before you're sitting in the Planned Parenthood with your legs up. I was really hoping that that it wouldn't be Anne Hathaway, but I figured that she would come down here. But we're there. We do have an insurrection, though, by the way. Kai Newkirk tweets out, breaking just now, several women interrupted oral arguments inside the Supreme Court chamber to denounce the Dobbs decision that revealed Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court cut off live stream. One woman says, "We will restore our freedom to choose. Women of America, vote. Retweet if you stand with them." Let's listen.
Individual accounts. Any failure to file a report thus gives rise to a single statutory violation. A single statutory violation, no matter how many accounts a person has or how many mistakes a person might make on a single form. Because there is no independent duty to report each account, there is no independent violation every time an account is not reported. According to the government, petitioner violated the Act 272 times for unintentionally individual accounts. Any failure to file a...
So I'm pretty sure that's an insurrection. A simple trespass on a government building, interrupting an official action. I'm almost positive that's insurrection. So can we look forward to these women being detained for months upon years without a lawyer? Anything like that? And of course, the replies are turned off. Update: the three women who peacefully interrupted the Supreme Court arguments today to denounce the Dobbs and call on women to vote to restore choice are being held in jail and charged with misdemeanors. You can support them by voting and pitching in to fund their legal support. And a series of news articles talking about them that we actually are going to skip over. But also, of course, the replies are off. We do see a litany of quote tweets that are saying all the same thing. Insurrection, disrupting government proceedings. I feel like I've heard this before. Sounds insurrection-y to me. Please place them in your January 6th gulag. Thank you. Let's see, what else do we have here? Voter ID laws, brutally dangerous and dehumanizing for transgender people forced to out themselves, says NBC report. Pretty sure in that case we know. NBC News reported that transgender people are disproportionately affected by strict voter ID laws, especially in the South. NBC Out reporter Joe Yerkaba documented how one transgender person in Nashville felt threatened when flagged by a ballot worker because the gender listed on identification documents didn't match the person's current appearance when the person tried to vote in 2016. "I had to out myself as transgender," said Henry Seaton, who claimed that admitting to being transgender could be brutally dangerous, especially where I was living, which is a conservative suburb. Why do you live there? If it's so dangerous to you, why do you live there? Especially if it's in a suburb. Like, typically when you're out in a conservative suburb, you've got the choice to live there. I will admit that I have lived in places that are dangerous to me. like east of 22nd Avenue in Kenosha. But when I was that, I know that there might be kids watching. When I was that gosh darn poor, that was all that I could afford. Seaton, who is transgender justice advocate for the ACLU of Tennessee, went on to say that voting experience at the Nazarene Church was dehumanizing. It's not just embarrassing, but it's terrifying to have to do that, to try to read the room and see, like, are they going to kick me out? Seaton added. It can be really dehumanizing when you have your whole identity nitpicked just so you can cast your ballot and have your voice be heard. A transsexual activist told NPC News that it's expected transgender people will be harassed by poll workers and other voters when they go to the vote this year. People who might be inclined to harass marginalized voters at the poll are more aware of trans people's existence, said National Center for Transgender Equality Police Director Olivia Hunt. So I expected that we're going to be hearing more stories of trans people being harassed, whether by voters, poll workers, poll monitors, or other folks who are present during the election. A report from the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law found that about 200,000 transgender people could be restricted from voting because they didn't have ID that matches the identity that they outwardly present. Once again, when I look at this particular one, when they go and look at this and say, is this person transgender? I don't think you're hiding anything. I'm pretty sure they know.
Show me the one whose safety deems such destruction.
Yeah, my ex-fiance had a little bit of issue with that too, Quest Fanning. The first girl I was engaged to, when she was going to get permits and driver's licenses, realized that they never actually changed her last name off of what was on her birth certificate, which was her mother's maiden name, I believe. Yes, it was her mother's maiden name, but she'd always been enrolled in school and everywhere else under her stepdad's name. It was a situation like she'd never known her father, so. From the Daily Wire, Arizona judge issues restraining order against voter organization monitoring drop boxes a week after ruling in their favor. From John Rigolizzo. Why? Because of course they did. Just days after allowing an activist group to monitor ballot drop boxes, a federal judge issued a restraining order restricting the group's activities. In an order handed down Tuesday, Judge Michael T. Liberty of U.S. District Court of Arizona severely curtailed the activities that members of the election activist group Clean Elections USA can engage in while monitoring drop boxes in the state. The judge also mandated that the group's founder, Melody Jennings, must correct public statements she made about ballot drop boxes, among other orders. According to the order, while the group is monitoring drop boxes, they are not allowed to intentionally be within 75 feet of a ballot drop box or a building a drop box is located in. Intentionally follow voters dropping off ballots at a drop box when voters are within the prescribed area of a drop box. The first one, now inside of a building, I disagree with, but to be within 75 feet, I actually do agree with that because, you know, it's the same thing with campaigning by polling places and whatnot. But inside of a building that has one, I think that is a bit excessive. Speak to or yell at anyone dropping off ballots within the prescribed area unless they're spoken to or yelled at first. And openly carry firearms or wear body armor within 200 feet of a drop box. In addition, the judge ordered the Clean Elections USA to post a statement to their social media and to Jennings' personal Truth Social account that it's not always illegal to deposit multiple ballots at a ballot drop box, the statement reads. That I don't agree with. It is legal to deposit the ballot at a family member, household member, or person for whom you are a caregiver. Here are the rules for ballot drop boxes by which I ask you to abide. The post must be accompanied by a copy of Arizona's ballot drop box law or a web link to the text of the law, along with a copy or a link to the restraining order itself. So now they can't go poll watch. And with that, I think because we got somebody waiting to come do work in here, we're going to call it for the day. So, last thing that we're going to do is a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. And there's actually one that's kind of in the middle as well. It could go both ways. So, thing that I like, October 21st is Back to the Future Day. So I sat down over the weekend of October 21st and watched all three of one of my favorite movie series of all times, Back to the Future. Now, of course, Back to the Future Day refers to the date that the Doc and Marty went forward to in 2015 in the second movie, but it's still always fun to sit down and watch all three of the movies because they're great movies. The second two, not quite as much as the first one. You know, the plot hole of, "You chicken McFly!" That was never mentioned anywhere in the first movie, but suddenly was a major plot driving point of the second two movies. It's still fun. And there are plenty of other plot holes, so we are going to watch the original 1985 trailer for Back to the Future.
Steven Spielberg presents Back to the Future, a Robert Zemeckis film. Marty leads an ordinary life.
No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley. Well, history is going to change.
And 1985 is not his year. But Dr. Brown is about to change all that.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? What, a DeLorean?
He's sending Marty 30 years back in time.
It's a flying saucer from outer space!
Now, he's trapped in the past.
It's got to be a dream.
About to meet
Chocolate.
his future father.
He's a peeping Tom.
Wow!
And he's making an impression on his mother.
He's an absolute dream. And he can sleep in my room.
Anything you do could have serious repercussions on future events.
Now, he's got to make his mother and father fall in love.
For crying out loud, I haven't even been born yet.
And only Dr. Brown can help him get back to the future.
Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear? Precisely.
Michael J. Fox.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Christopher Lloyd.
There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
Back to the future.
Probably one of the better movies that was put on, the original Back to the Future. One of the better ones that was put to film, of course, giving us... I was looking up one of my favorite Mother's Day cards, actually. Let me pull this up into a new tab and bring this over. The Happy Mother's Day card. But yeah, I've always loved the movie, and it's not even... I wouldn't call Back to the Future a science fiction movie. It was a culture movie. It was showing what the culture was by trying to bring somebody into it who never existed in it. And I mean, so much of it, like they did that movie so well. And they tried to retroact some of it on top of it as well, especially in the second movie with the Doc, because I mean, they never intended there to be a second movie. So they never got actors to play the adult versions of everybody, or the future versions of everybody, the present day versions of everybody. But most everybody that was in that movie was intended to be spent their entire time at the age that they were in 1955. So, like Leah Thompson, Michael J. Fox, obviously, but Christopher Lloyd, Crispin Glover, you know, they made them up and they set them up and they dressed them up to be their future or present day counterparts from 85 who were all in their 40s, or in Lloyd's case, the 70s. But, you know, most of the movie they were supposed to be in their teens, or in Lloyd's case, 47. Which, I mean, Christopher Lloyd was in his 40s in that movie, but he had grown up in the era that this was all set in. He was in his teens at that time. And I never quite understood why they had to go through the aspect of pulling the face off, the face mask, the old man face mask from the second Back to the Future movie, where the doc had come back from the future and got a all-natural rejuvenation, changed the blood, added spleen to his life, took some wrinkles out, etc. Well, it's because even though Doc Brown was 70, Christopher Lloyd was only in his 40s. I think he might have been 50 by the time that movie came out, but so they'd given him the old man makeup for the first movie, but they didn't want to have him stay in makeup for the rest of the next two movies. A lot of interesting stuff about that. I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. And the thing in the middle, the most hated kitty put out this question, and I think this person's kind of on most of our sides, but he poses the question of, they admitted why they were wrong and apologized. You've been vindicated, so why are you still mad? And be honest. And there have been a lot of really good things in here. People are pointing out the fact that some of them had to bend the knee to feed their families. I was lucky to the point that I don't have a family to feed, that I didn't have to jump down and bend the knee for it. And there are people who are mad over the fact that they are authoritarian. They try to shut down businesses, etc. And I mean, I put my answer out here. Number one, because we read the Amnesty article, they admitted absolutely nothing. Their admission was, oops, our bad, but it's what we should have done at the time anyway, so we can't be really held at fault. Number two, they didn't apologize. They just begged us to forget about it. It wasn't, we're sorry, it was just drop it. And number three, and the most important, is that I was never mad about any of this. I knew who these people were right from the beginning. Yes, it was an annoyance, but I went out of my way to make sure that I spent as little money as possible in that time in places that were lockdowners, that wouldn't allow the customers to come in. And I tried to favor businesses that didn't give a damn about it. But I knew who these people were. Everybody knew who these people were. You knew it, I knew it, everybody else knew it. How can you be mad about them getting the ball and taking advantage about it when you knew that they're going to do this again? They're going to find some other thing to cook up to take advantage of and then run with it. So, yeah, I can't really bring myself to be mad about this. I can't. But now for a thing that I hate, and we bring ourselves back around to where we started talking about the Biden speech and talk about January 6th. So, the Republican Accountability Project put this ad out, featuring one Gladys Sicknick, the mother of the Capitol Police officer who died after, and they did make sure to put it in there, after January 6th. Let's listen to what it is that Mrs. Sicknick had to say.
I'm Gladys Sicknick. I'm the mother of Brian Sicknick, the Capitol Police officer who died defending our country on January 6th. Kari Lake is very dangerous for our country. She saw what happened on January 6th and continues to spread the big lie. And we're going to have more violence because they believe whatever she says. It's very dire for our democracy, for our country, with candidates like Kari Lake. My son died because of people like Kari Lake.
Your son died from a completely unrelated medical condition that had nothing to do with what happened on that day, that he probably shouldn't have been on the front lines for to begin with, especially if they knew that he was having blood clotting issues. And this was pre-holy jab, by the way, keep in mind. But your son died from a stroke in a hospital days later. And yes, by the way, if there is any at all political violence, there is going to be political violence. But it's not going to be coming from the right, even though some of it might be staged as such. The red-headed libertarian says, if you're looking for people who cause strokes, check with Fauci. reading from this, mother of fallen Capitol Officer Sicknick, he died because of people like Carrie Lake. From Jared Gons. The mother of the officer who died amid the storming of the Capitol on January 6th says in a new... No, he did not die amid the storming of the Capitol. He died a full, separate 2 days later. The ad from the Republican Accountability Project, a political action committee that opposes Republicans who supported efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, features Gladys Sicknick, the mother of fallen U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. Sicknick says in the ad that Lake saw what happened during the insurrection and continues to spread false information about the 2020 presidential election being stolen from former President Trump. It's very dire for our democracy, for our country, with the candidates like Carrie Lake, she said. My son died because of people like Carrie. Sicknick said more violence will occur in the future if people believe whatever she says. Well, just like people believe whatever you say in a situation like this. Because, again, your son died of a completely different medical incident. I would go as far as to say that he should have been on desk duty for all this. But that's not my choice. That's between you and the Capitol Police. But they're pulling out all the stops, and like I said at the top of the show, they need January 6th. They need it. They can't live without it. But that's what we have for that. What an interesting show. Talking about Biden a lot. Let's head out of here for the day. Had to shut everything down, so I gotta go get my my music back. Now we've got music fighting. There we go. So, thanks everybody who came by and chatted and hung out in the live chat and came and voiced your opinion. It was a good one. I've been kind of watching you guys throughout the day today. And if you are just lurking, get at least one last minute message in so I can come back in. And thank you. Tomorrow, we'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Seeing what happens here as we come up to one of the last couple episodes before the midterms. So, we'll look at some polling, we'll look and see what's coming off of that, and we'll probably be talking about Twitter too, because that's going to be a never-ending story. We'll be back here again, looking forward to seeing you guys, and until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.